Hello, everyone. We are
Hello.
live, episode 4 of Live Happily Ever Awesome. Thanks for joining. We are here with Julie Rappaport, PACT certified therapist, counselor, helping couples sort of get that special something back, or just keep it if they have it, right?
Yep.
So
Make
today we
something
are
good, great.
talking. What's that?
I said make something good, great.
There you go. I like that. You are. Is it snowing where you are?
Yes. Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah, they closed down schools and rec centers, and I mean
Oh, fun.
it's just funny. There's like winter storm warning, but it's really not. It's not. I mean, it's snowing, right? It's Colorado,
It's
so
Colorado. Yeah, you'd think they'd
I
be
don't
used
know.
to it by now.
Yeah, but it's like the weather forecast comes around, and it's like winter warning, and then everything gets shut down.
Yeah, I hear it.
So
The sky's falling.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
today's episode is called Are You a Team Player or a Solo Operator?
yeah.
When we first talked about titles for this one, you and I got into a discussion because I didn't understand sort of what you were trying to get at. So, why don't you explain a little bit about what you were starting with, what sort of the idea was that sparked this title, and then we'll get into what it all means.
Well, I think it comes from my work with clients. When they come into my office and they're talking about certain struggles or certain even if they're trying to work something out, sometimes they just have uh, a hard time collaborating, working it out as a team. I would say they kind of go into more uh, single unit thinking, and then it becomes me against you. And so that's one aspect of it. And then another aspect is, we talked in a previous episode about some attachment, and there's we talked about the anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. And each are, um, how would I say, self-serving strategies. They
What do you mean by that?
they're more of a one-person system thinking. Um, they are out to, it was a survival strategy when they were young, and so then as they grow up and in their intimate relationship, each are kind of concerned still about how do they work and how do they get satisfied and how do they get love and how do they survive, really. And yet one the anxious attached individual um, is is more about external gratification, external processing, meaning, if there's something going on for them, they want to talk about it. They want to process it. They want to have their partner as somebody to bounce things off of. They want to include their partner. They are all about their partner, because if they kind of they grew up usually having to take care of um, a primary caregiver or to grow up too fast. And so they are about, if that my primary caregiver is okay and I take care of them and make them okay, then I'm more apt to get my needs met. So
Okay.
it looks very team oriented because they're thinking about other, but it's in the service of the self. And it can be very self-abandoning in a way too, because they are all about other, and they don't really know how to regulate themselves. They don't really know how to be by themselves.
Mm.
It's a harder time. They have a harder time being with just themselves. They are all about other. So it can look more team for focused, but underneath it's very individualistic. whereas the avoidant attached individual usually comes from a place of neglect in their childhood, spent a lot of time alone, coped with life that way, kind of went off. And, if you spend a lot of time as alone as a kid, you are taking care of yourself. You are finding ways to entertain yourself. You are, you might play video games, or might go into a fantasy world. You might, read, you might, whatever it is that you're doing, but it's all about, I take care of me. And because nobody else is going to. And so it becomes naturally so. It becomes a little bit, and this gets a bad rap, but I'm going to use the word anyway, but it's selfish. And rightfully so. They have to be that way because nobody else is taking care of them. But they become more self-centered because of that. And so as a result, when it comes to working in a system, a two-person system, they can tend to default to, I just take care of myself. And so it definitely looks like they're a solo operator. And so oftentimes the anxious, if an avoidant is paired up with more an anxious attached individual, there is a rub, because the anxious attached individual has a much easier time wanting to collaborate, wanting to include the other person, wanting to work as a team. That's their natural orientation. But it's not natural for the avoidant. And so then they can default to solo operator, which then leaves the anxious avoidant, it's called anxiously attached individual, feeling like they're on their own, feeling like they don't have a teammate, feeling like they have to do it all themselves, and which is a replay of their childhood. And they got really resentful as a kid in their childhood because they got ripped off. They didn't get to be a kid. And now they're in a relationship again where they have to do it all themselves, and they're resentful. So it becomes it's a common dynamic that I see.
So the avoidant and the anxious often have the issues when they're coupled together.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The avoidant attached and the anxious attached are sort of opposites, but when they come together, it's like one is trying to be collaborative, but they come off as a solo operator. And so that's where the rub is.
One is trying to be collaborative because that's how they're oriented. Mm-hmm. They are oriented outside. And the other, in times of stress, that one is more like reaching over the, what's it called? I can't even think of reaching over to, extend an olive branch and like work together more often. And the avoidant is more often like, I just take care of me, you take care of you, and we'll be good. And doesn't understand, there's a lot of misunderstanding of each individual, but the avoidant doesn't understand why the anxiously attached individual can't just take care of themselves. Yeah. And so they then, think they're needy, think they're, and the other person, the anxious attached, is like, why are you so selfish? Why do you only think of yourself? Why do you? So that's the kind of common dynamic.
Interesting. So Judy says here that her daughter's like this. I think she's talking about the anxious attached. Mm-hmm. She learned it from me. She worries about everyone more than herself. Getting validation from everyone else around is okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a common theme.
Yeah, I mean it is, and it's a blessing and a curse. It's really, I'm sure her daughter is extremely empathetic. I'm sure she can, really tend to people's needs and be there for others. But it's at the sake of self. And so it's, the work is like, how can she kind of come home to herself and be okay and find some self validation? How can she be okay when she doesn't get that from other? How can she, when everything in her body wants to go and process with somebody else, can she work that edge and be like, no, I'm just going to hunker down, wrap myself in a blanket, and just breathe and find my own sense of what do I want to say, of self-soothing, really.
Mhm. Are there strategies that you recommend for people that are in that kind of mindset or attachment style that can sort of get out of it, or at least learn to become a team player when they need to be?
Well, with the anxious attached individual, it's they are oriented to work as more of a team because that's how they think.
Mhm.
That's their orientation. It's much harder for them to be an individual and kind of think of themselves. And so that's the work for them, is learning how to, sometimes if I were working with individuals with this attachment style, when I would work with individuals, it would be, I would give them the assignment of, okay, I want you to, this week, I want you to just choose 3 different times to say no to
Mm.
somebody when they ask you to do something, or can you do this, or will you do this, or, and even if you can do it or want to do it, that you actually just choose that at a time that you're practicing saying no. And then what happens for them, there's going to be a somatic response with all of that, because there's this panic of like, if I don't say yes, I'm not X. I'm not going to be liked. I'm not going to be loved. I'm not going to, whatever it is. And so sitting with that feeling and somatic feeling and breathing, and because it is going to feel to their nervous system, if this was a way that they cope to survive, then not doing it, i.e. saying no, is going to feel in their nervous system as though they're going to die. They're not going to
Mm.
survive. And so they really have to just breathe into that. And, maybe they can journal with that, and really just, but the more they do that and practice that and sit with it and kind of work with it, the more resiliency they get, in terms of being like, it might feel initially or like, the first couple months that they're doing it, that they're going to die. And as they build that, what's called the window of tolerance, then they get, it's like building a muscle. They're like, oh, I'm not going to die. This is just uncomfortable, or, it titrates.
Hmm. Okay. And so what kind of things do you recommend for the people that are not the anxious attached, but the other ones?
The
What are they called?
avoidant.
Avoidant attached, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's kind of pointing out that how they survived, that it's a natural inkling for them to just default to, and again, selfishness, but it's like they had to be selfish. And so it's like, of course, it's understandable. It's not a bad thing. Thank God they did that, because otherwise they wouldn't be here. However, it doesn't bode well in a 2-person system. It's, that's the rub. And for them, it's more like, listen, you can, if you want to go and if you're going to default to that every single time, then you're going to have an upset partner, who's going to feel abandoned, and that's not going to go well for you. So if you aren't willing to change that, if you're not willing to work that edge and really be a team player, then your best bet is to just, why be in a relationship, first of all? And second of all, your best bet is to, if you don't want to deal with somebody being angry all the time, you just go be a solo operator on your own. And so it's the concept of everybody, I would say most everybody understands what it means to be on a team. Either they've been on one at work, or on a sports team, or they've watched sports, or they have that concept. But for some reason, when we get into our, intimate relationship and those attachment systems are at play, it's like that all falls by the wayside, and people forget that they actually need to do this in order to, have a winning season. And oftentimes I might ask clients who are having a hard time with this, or having a hard time collaborating and being a team, of like, would you place bets on your team to win this season? Like, or would you be like, heck no, absolutely not. This is you're never going to win. If you have a plan in place and then you just take the ball and do whatever you want because you're more of a solo operator, you're never going to win, right? It's just a failing season, and you might as well just scrap it. Coaches get fired for that stuff,
You mentioned that sometimes you see clients by themselves. Is that fairly common when you have couples coming, whether it's by prescription from you to say, hey, I think we need to work separately first or during these group sessions, or do you often get like one partner coming with the other partner not coming ever?
So let me clarify.
Okay.
Before I became and just practiced as a couples therapist, I saw individuals.
Okay.
When I see a couple, I only see the couple, because the couple system is my client. I do not ever see a person on their own.
Okay.
I will refer them out. There are couples therapists that do that. I don't ever want to know anything more than the couple. I don't ever want, it's very important if I'm going to do any individual type work, sometimes we do that. If somebody has a lot of trauma or something comes up in the session where I'm having to work just with one individual, it's really important to have the partner there, because they are experiencing this in their marriage or couplehood relationship. They are experiencing either these things that I'm working with, or they're experiencing the fallout of it or whatever. So having them be a part of that is really important. And there's also, sometimes it all goes all the way back, to the attachment of the person's childhood, in which case it informs the partner of like, oh, right, this, I get it. This is where it comes from. And this is how I've added to it. And so there's a lot of, it's just so rich to have both parties there. There are times when I will want somebody to have a little bit extra support outside of our couple sessions, which then I might recommend an individual therapist. Or if one person has an individual therapist and the other person doesn't, I oftentimes will recommend that the other person get one, just so each person has kind of their own advocate. Having an individual therapist is like having somebody that's on your side.
Yeah.
So,
do you think everyone should have a therapist?
Should is a strong word. I think everyone could benefit from having a therapist. Everybody could. And I'm even more of an advocate of, and this, of course, could be my bias, but I'm more of an advocate of, if you're in a relationship, you should have a couples therapist.
Sure.
It's just to think that two people would not have any issues come up that were raised completely in different households and different environments and different cultures and different, and it would just magically happen. It's just kind of silly. So I think getting support is always good.
It kind of brings a new level of credence to arranged marriages when you think about it. Right?
Yeah.
Like perfectly selected, or at least from an upbringing perspective, socioeconomic, those things. You can't guarantee that just because somebody has, lives the same way, that they have that same attachment style necessarily, but it's kind of interesting that is oftentimes successful in certain cultures.
Well, I mean, I think it points to is that, a lot of times I will ask couples when they're in my office of like, why are you two together? And it's amazing how people just kind of are shocked by that question because, it's like, well, why? Like, of course, we're just together, and they oftentimes will say, because we love one another. And love is just, it's, unfortunately, it's not enough. Like, this is,
Yeah.
on some level, this is a survival. I mean, not on some level, but it is a survival unit. This is how people survive. They take care of one another. They, it's like if somebody goes to the hospital, their partner is there to help them and take care of them. And, it's like, well, you survive this way together. And if you don't take care of one another, you will bear the repercussions of that. And, way back when, if they were the only two people there on the earth and there were woolly mammoths around, like, they wouldn't give a shit about any of this stuff that maybe they fight about. They would only be, how can we survive against this woolly mammoth? And it's the same stuff today, but we have lots of other bells and whistles and distractions and comforts and, luxuries that distract us from that very point. So coming back to the arranged marriage, it's like, it doesn't have to be love. Like, that can grow, that can develop, or it doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in something where I didn't love somebody, but it's not a requirement to have it be successful. It's so much more of, how do you work as a team? How do you survive and take care of one another? How do you make life good for one another? How do you make life easy for one another? So I think that's a big reason why those can work so well.
Yeah. Josh says you can love someone, but if they don't make your life easier by existing alongside you and supporting you, they ain't it.
I mean, they can be it, but yes, it's like, it's
not as
not
fun.
mutually exclusive. Yeah. I mean,
Not as fun. All right. So what else can we say about this team player collaborator thing? If I'm one or the other, can I easily sort of, because I assume collaboration is the goal, right?
yes.
Team player. So solo
Yes.
operator, no bueno. We want to try to fix that. Collaborator is great as long as you're not completely selling yourself short, or I guess leaving yourself out at the expense of helping other people in that like over collaboration role.
Yeah. It's more like losing oneself.
Losing yourself.
So this goes back to like interregulation or co-regulation. So interregulation or interdependency oftentimes can get confused with codependency. Codependency would be more what the anxious attached is prone towards, is, I'll take care of you at the expense of me. It's all about you. And we're not advocating for that. We're advocating for, yes, you take care of one another, but you also have an onus of responsibility on yourself. So it's interdependence as well as some independence. And those combined, not at the expense of the other, are what we're going for. And so, is it easy? No, it's not easy, because each are oriented in a certain way. And so it's not easy for the anxious individual to not be, constantly reaching out. It's not easy for them. It's not easy for the avoidant to think of other. They're not oriented that way. But in order to, if they really want to make something work, the relationship work, that's the work they have to do. So it's a very simple concept. It's like, oh, very simple concept. Avoidant person needs to be thinking of the other person. The avoidant. And the anxious one needs to be coming back home more and stop everything being about the other person. Those are simple concepts, but they're not easy. So that's the work. And that's why, in relation, like coming back to what I said of like having a couples counselor to help navigate those things, um, is help is going to be more success, hopefully make you be more successful, as well as when we're when we're dysregulated, meaning we're stressed in whatever fashion, we're upset, angry, sad, whatever. Those are the times where human beings they lose their frontal cortex, which is what makes us human beings, and they become more reptilian. They're more in the back of their limbic brain, and they begin to act poorly. They begin to act as though they're in survival. And so if that's the case, they're going to default to their one person system. And so there's a whole, we talked about arousal regulation I think in the first episode of like the 3 tenets of PACT, of arousal regulation, brain, or neuroscience, and attachment. All of those are going to be at play of like, oh, we're back in the limbic system of the brain. That's the neurobiology. We are aroused. That's the arousal regulation. And then the attachment system is, oh, we're going back to, what we knew to survive. And so all of that comes into play, and it doesn't bode well for collaboration. And so it's even in those times, how are you guys going to still work together? Which is challenging.
Yeah.
It's very challenging.
Yeah. So in summary, again, quick little like homework tips for people that are in those different attachment styles. I think you mentioned like journaling for someone, but give us like some quick hits that maybe we can go and work on ourselves if we want to sort of practice.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the anxious, it would be to try to say no in a not in a reactive resentment way. It's like just practicing saying no, sitting with yourself of like, what happens for you in your body? What sensations do you feel? What feelings are you feeling? What are you telling yourself? What are the scripts that are going on? Writing those things down, sitting with yourself anytime that you have some emotion that's uncomfortable, and all you want to do is pick up the phone and talk to your best friend or whatever, or your girlfriend or friend. It's like, oh, how about trying this time not doing that, seeing what comes up, seeing what your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations are, writing about that. You will gain and just sitting with yourself, like I said, wrapping yourself in a blanket, soothing yourself. What are you going to do to get through this? Anxiously avoidant, anxiously attached individuals that's not their forte. They're not great at soothing. They get soothing from external objects, i.e. people. So anything that is like come home, or if they're with their partner, of like, how can I invite connection, because they really want connection. How can I invite it, but also be okay if my partner isn't up for it right then? And and doing that again with not resentful. It's like, oh, I'm hey, you want to come over here and sit next to me? I'm going to read my book. I'd love for you to join me. If not, that's okay. And then actually being okay, and being okay just reading your book and not sitting there and waiting for that person to come, like actually being okay. So that would be the anxiously attached one. And then the avoidant, it's that, really thinking about, what does my partner need? What does, how can I offer them connection? How can I make them know that I'm thinking about them? How can I talk, maybe even talking in we language, that can orient them towards a two-person system. I think a lot of times realizing for them of like, oh, wow, like I'm not a good a good partner because of this coping strategy that I have. And kind of realizing that and wanting their partner to, like, oftentimes, I mean, hopefully we all do, but they really just want their partner to be happy. And if they're like, oh, I can change this by beginning to think about what's good for them rather than just what's good for me, keeping agreements, not just defaulting to whatever I want to do when I want to do it, that's going to benefit me.
Hmm.
So really just, what does it mean to be a team? What does it mean to be a good team player? What kind of man or woman do I want to be in relationships such that I am pulling my weight? I am keeping agreements. I am collaborative. I am somebody that I would be first picked if if somebody were making a team.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's a good analogy. Great. Okay. Well, thanks for that. There are some comments in the chat about codependency. I feel like that could be its own episode. So we're not going to dig into that right now, but there is some talk about how does that come into play when we talk about being a team player or being a solo operator. And maybe that's something that we can dig into in a future episode.
Oh yeah.
Because I feel like that's not a quick answer.
It's not, but I would just say, as a general overview, like, again, take this with a grain of salt.
Teaser. Give us a teaser for next time.
Generally speaking, people who have an avoidant attachment style are more apt to gravitate towards addictions. And people with an anxious attachment style are more apt to be the codependent of those relationships and kind of fuel the addiction on some, not as a blaming thing, but they are part of that system in that way. They're the codependent.
I can see that.
Yeah, that would be the teaser.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And we still don't have set in stone future episode topics, except for when we meet later on and talk about them. So if you guys have suggestions on what you want us to talk about, please leave a comment on our YouTube channel or hit us up on Instagram at live at Live Happily Ever Awesome. And we will see you next week.
Can I just say one thing?
Of course.
So there's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right. Kateri.
Cat.
Says, my ex and I tried couples therapy, but I think it was too far gone. We go to our own therapy and our great co-parents and best friends just didn't work together. Like my question, and I don't want to have you, outed or anything, if it's too vulnerable, but I'm just wondering what didn't work together? What got in the way? What would she say didn't work? What was the crux? Because there's something there that is very interesting to me of like, oh, I mean, it's sometimes it doesn't work, right? It just doesn't. It's not what Chuck Woolery would say is a love connection, but great co-parents, that's wonderful in the sense of it shows that they can work together. So I'm curious as to, was it just too much resentment, too much, too many bad memories, too many, that they just couldn't get over, or was it just like love is lost and we love one another as best friends and it's just not a love connection kind of thing, so I'm just curious about that and certainly don't want to out anyone.
Yeah, I'm not sure if she's still listening either, so hopefully we'll get her back at some point and she can ask or call in next time. We can do that too.
Are anxious and codependent, or is this very different? Oh, kind of answered that.
Yeah, pretty much. You said that the avoidants are most likely to be the addicts and the opposite for the anxious.
Now, that isn't to say that everyone who's anxiously attached is codependent, or everyone who's avoidant is an addict, or, but those are when those things appear in relationships, that's what tends to be the pattern.
So very interesting, all this attachment stuff. I love that we get into that every time too, because I think people really want to understand that. And the more we talk about it, the more familiar people get with it and can sort of work on their own attachment styles and sort of deal with the things that might be, holding them back or keeping them from having more success in their relationship.
Yeah, and I think I would say overall, and this goes for individual stuff as well as relational stuff, is if you're comfortable, you're probably not, you're doing the thing that is right for you. If you're doing things that feel uncomfortable or hard, then you're probably doing the thing that is right for your partner and taking care of them. That's oftentimes how it goes. So just, it's like, if you just think about it, if you're comfortable in your individual therapy, you're probably not growing because, we only really grow when it's like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I want to change this. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Kind of like CrossFit.
Yeah. Damn it. I hate rowing.
But you got to do it.
I died yesterday. I'm glad to say that I'm actually alive today, but yesterday I died.
I'm glad you're alive.
Yeah.
That's
Reincarnation.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will wrap up. We will see everyone next week, same day, same time, Wednesday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific.
We might have to change that. Actually, we might change it to, we'll
Stay
keep
tuned.
in touch. Yeah.
See, we have staff meetings on YouTube, just like the Clydesdale Media. Love it. Okay, guys. Well, you take care. Julie, thanks again for joining us.
You.
And we'll talk to you next time.